President Biden also recently signed an executive order to restore and strengthen the asylum system. So the asylum system is really the way that people who are fleeing violence and other harms are able to present themselves at the border or even inside the United States and apply for humanitarian protections. So this is particularly an issue on the US-Mexico border, where in recent years we've seen a large number of migrants from Central America, specifically Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, fleeing violence in their homelands, making an incredibly dangerous journey, more than 1,000 miles across Mexico, and either presenting themselves at ports of entry or sometimes crossing without permission and then applying for asylum, which is part of our legal immigration system. It is part of our national and international obligations to give a fair hearing to anyone who claims that they can't be safely returned to their home country. Now, this system was really dismantled in literally dozens of ways by the Trump administration, and now the Biden administration can't restore it overnight, but with this executive order is taking the first steps to do so. So one of the first things that this executive order does that's really important is directing the US government to really go deep into the root causes of migration from Central America. It's not enough to reestablish an orderly process at the border, although that's really important. We have diplomats, we have foreign aid, we have lots of other tools at our disposal as a country to try to make it less necessary for people in Central America to flee violence in the first place. And so that's something that this executive order really kicks off in a serious way. It also revokes a lot of really harmful Trump-era orders that have essentially made it impossible for most people to apply for asylum. So it revokes a lot of those orders overnight and then sets the stage for rolling back a lot more Trump-era policies that have been harmful to asylum seekers. And then finally, this executive order calls for expanding immigration pathways beyond what currently exist for Central Americans who are in need of humanitarian protection. All in all, this executive order on asylum is not going to fix all of the problems in our asylum system overnight, but it is kicking off what is going to be a long, labor-intensive, but ultimately necessary, morally necessary process to build back the system by which people who desperately need humanitarian protections are able to apply for those protections in a fair and humane way. So going all the way back to when Joe Biden was a candidate for president, he made a commitment that as soon as he became president, he was going to form a task force to work as quickly as possible to find all of the parents that have lost track of their children as a result of the Trump administration's family separation policy, also known as the zero tolerance policy. And indeed, just a few days ago, President Biden signed an executive order whose sole purpose is to launch that interagency task force on the reunification of families. This task force, which is made up of cabinet officials who oversee the immigration system, is tasked with identifying every single child who was separated from their family at the United States-Mexico border during the Trump era. Number one, reunite any families that are still separated. There's an estimated many hundreds of families who tragically are still separated and haven't been able to find one another. So not only finding these families and reunifying them, but also providing trauma, mental health, and other social services they might need, and also possibly providing immigration status for parents who were sent back to their home countries, separated from their children, and will only now be reunited with their children who have been waiting for them in the United States for months or years. So again, this is not a problem that can be solved overnight, unfortunately, but it is at least a ray of hope for hundreds of families and the many, many advocates and attorneys who have been working tirelessly on their behalf these past several years to change course in this country and to at least start to repair a terrible wound that the U.S. government was responsible for.